Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened. This week we're going to be discussing the empath and the earthbound. So sit back and pour yourself a nice cup of tea because Denise and I are going to share stories, tips, and techniques for recognizing, do you have an earthbound in your home or office? What can you do about it? And how, as an empath, are you extra sensitive to this phenomenon? Denise, you've had some experiences with earthbounds, as have I. Did you have them growing up as a kid too?
I did, and I grew up in an old house, again in New England, and I was always terrified to go in the basement, and it was a house from the early 1800s, and dirt floor basements, which are pretty common in old homes in New England, and it would just scare the bejesus out of me to go down there, and I would feel like there was always someone there and watch and get the tingly on the back of the neck. I've never been really fond of going into basements, but especially in old houses.
Yes. I've always wondered, if you are a ghost and you somehow realize that you're immortal, but you're stuck on this third dimension, why choose a basement or an attic or a creepy closet under the stairs? I never
Right,
understood that.
but they do. A
Well,
lot do anyway.
it's either because they're trying to stay out of our way, or it's because a lot of people believe that earthbound, negative earthbounds, not all earthbounds, feed off our fear. And we are naturally fearful in dark, enclosed places like basements and attics. So maybe that's why. But I always thought, if I went on earthbound, like, I don't know, I'd go hang out at the plaza in New York City.
And I think that that's a really important delineation is between earthbound spirits who are still hanging around because they're still, they may not realize that it was a sudden death and they don't realize that they've actually passed over, or they're so attached to a loved one or a family or a place, or they're trying to help still. That makes sense. But the other extreme are those, exactly what you just said, that are feeding off the fear. They're drawn to that fear energy that you'll find in hospitals, psych wards, battlefields, where there's been a lot of upheaval. Also on that list, which surprised me, was like dental offices or medical offices. And I never really thought about that as being a really scary place. But for a lot of people, that incites panic and fear. So it makes sense that they'd be drawn to that. And another little tidbit was like people who have been on death row that just are so revengeful that they'll hang around as well. So that delineation between those that are stuck because they're not aware of it, or it's a love connection versus trying to feed off fear and anger and the negativity stuff.
Right. So there are, I guess, what you would call positive earthbounds, and then there are the more negative, not so nice ones who stay around just to harass people like us or to avoid what they believe will be their ultimate punishment.
I was talking with someone recently, and if a house is disturbed, that sometimes entities or earthbound spirits that are connected with a home or a situation that happened at that home, because there's no time factor on the other side. I mean, as we've said many times, time is a man-made constraint only on this plane, that it awakens them and they'll come back full speed ahead, even though it may be dormant for years, or it may be that other people have lived in a home and there was no activity, and then a new family moves in and then it's off the charts because of the frequency of the people living there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think time must be different for them. And I do think that they feed off our energy. So if a home is empty, they have no energy to feed off of.
Right.
And what I find interesting, there's a haunted house in our neighborhood. And if there's a believer, like someone who's open-minded, like you and I, that situation will make itself known. But the last two homeowners have been completely closed off to anything like that, any belief at all. And so they have not sensed any phenomenon. And I always wonder, you read about Amityville, that's a very contentious issue anyway. Mm-hmm. But, the new owners or recent longtime owners have said there's nothing there. And I always wonder, is it a combination, kind of like Santa Claus, you have to believe to receive? You know what I mean? Or
And I think, do you want me to share my story now? And then we can jump off
yes,
of that, or
I
do
would
you want?
love to. Yeah. No, go
Because
ahead,
I think
please.
that that's a good base for a lot of things. Is recently a woman contacted me, and her brother had passed, and I have asked her if I could share this, and she said okay. Thought it would help a lot of people. But her son, who's off the charts, psychic, intuitive, in very, very, very empathic little guy, three and a half, 4 years old, little guy. He was having really like issues. He wouldn't sleep in his bed, which I know a lot of times that happens with little kids. But he was afraid to be in his room, and he kept saying, "The monster comes out of the closet at night when you leave." So, and I just got willies from head to toe when I said that. And there were also other things. And when I went to her home, it was downstairs, beautiful home, very tasteful, elegant home. And then about halfway up the stairs, she said, "Well, come upstairs and see if you feel anything." So the first thing is we walked up about halfway up the stairs, and I said, "Ooh, that just felt really different." And she said, "That's where I get it too, because this woman is off the charts sensitive as well." And we went up and went through her bedroom, and then she said, "Well," and I said, "Oh, right by this closet, like if you went around the corner, there was a closet and a bedroom off the a bathroom off the master bedroom." And I said, "Right here, it just feels so dense, uncomfortable. I feel anxious. I don't like this here." And she said, she said, "This is where I pick it up too." And when she said, "When I've been in the shower, I've heard a little person, a little child calling me, 'Mommy, mommy, mommy.' And then I'll come out, I'll rush out. My son is asleep or he's playing with trucks." And then she's heard a baby crying. And she was, she has a 5-month-old as well. And she'd rush out and she'd, "Oh," and the baby would just be sitting, sleeping sound. So there was nothing going on with the other children. And this happened over and over and over. And then we went into the little boy's bedroom, and it was just heavy. The energy was so heavy in here. And I said, "Holy shit, what a difference." And she said, "Exactly." And I was drawn to walk over to the closet, and I stood there, and I got, when you get willies and they just won't go away, they're from head to toe and you're almost vibrating
Yeah.
because they're so intense. And I stood there and I got this incredible, incredible, overwhelming fear, anxiety. Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. And I couldn't get rid of it. Like I have the willies now. But like for a quick flash, I saw these two little kids, like two little tiny kids huddled in the back of the closet. Like it was a quick flash. But the fear was, you could taste it. It was so strong. So I didn't say anything to the woman, and I stepped away, and I said, "Could you come over and just stand by the closet and see if you feel anything?" She said, except for the little kid part, she said exactly all the physical things I was feeling. The anxiety, the willies from head to toe, the fear-based stuff. And she said, I'm embarrassed to say this. She said, "I hate going in and out of this closet." She said, "I put things in, I get out of there quick. I hate it." So the little boy had said these things were coming out of the closet. So what we ended up doing was I, gave her some sage. I gave her some techniques on how to clear, because I do think that's really important for people to hear, is that you can do this. You can help move these spirits along. And I got back in touch with her, and it is letters. She's not hearing the baby anymore. She's not hearing the little boy. She asked her son if the scary monster man. He said no. He's far, far away now. So I think that it's phenomenal that energy had, and it felt like it was from like the 1800s. It didn't feel like new energy in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that how powerful and stuck. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, they can be powerful and stuck. Did you get a sense that something was keeping them stuck there?
Yes. There was also, and this was interesting because the little boy had said, "And the scarecrow man." And when that asked about it, and this was on this old farm, and there was lots of fields and stuff. And before she said that, I said, "There's some really bad stuff happened to those kids in this house." And I'm seeing a man that worked on the farm, and I described this long, lean, kind of scraggly guy, bad teeth. And this was going back. So of course, dental care was very different in the 1800s. And she just kind of looked at me, and we kind of surmised that might have been the scarecrow man. But I really feel like he hurt those children. And that's why they were stuck there.
Right. See, I have such a hard time with that idea that children could be harmed by someone and then stay stuck as ghosts after being abused that way, it makes me wonder what the heck is going on.
When I did some shamanic work years ago, and one of the things that they teach you that's really it's heavy duty stuff is they teach you to go into the middle world, and to, if there are people who haven't transitioned, you can ask them, are they okay, do they want to move on? And it's always free will and choice, even when you've passed. And I did this work one time, and I was telling a friend of mine about this, and she said, you need to share this on the Earthbound show. That at first you kind of walk through this thing, and it's all guided. Well, we've talked about the journey stuff before. It's basically a guided meditation that you take yourself on. And into the middle world is to help people cross. So the first person I came to was an old man, and it was, he wasn't leaving because he was afraid his wife needed him. And and instantly in my mind, I flashed, I saw the wife, she was in the hospital, she was getting ready to pass. And so he left knowing he could help her more on the other side. And they teach you in shamanic work how to open a portal to help people lift up and go on their way. And then I went a little further, and there was this little tiny girl huddled in a corner, just a little girl. And I went up and I picked her up, and I said, why are you still here? I said, do you want to go? And she said, my mother told me to stay here and wait. And how she had passed was the mother's boyfriend at the time had killed the little girl, and the mother ended up in prison. And right when that flashed in my head, I saw a picture of the little girl, and I was standing in a prison cell, and there was a picture of the little girl above this woman's bed. And it was, so we opened the portal, and this grandmother woman helped lift this girl up. And what was really cool is they'll help you heal on the other side, because what they did was they took this little girl up through, and this, for anyone who's listening thinks this is crazy train, if you've done this work, it's as real as carbon-based stuff. It's absolutely fascinating. So they lifted her up, and there was this beautiful, beautiful little girl bedroom that she could be a little girl and wait for her mom to get there. And it's so intense what can keep us stuck or can keep someone else stuck. But that made perfect sense to me at the time, because we do that with our kids. We'll say, wait here and I'll be right back, or you sit here on this chair and I'll come get you. And if she had told her, don't you move and I'll be right back, and then she never came back, that could keep a little kid stuck.
I really believe time is different on the other side. I really do.
There isn't any.
I used to have dreams. I don't so much anymore, but I used to have dreams where I was helping stuck souls cross over. And I had this very vivid dream that I was standing in front of the hospital in my city, and there was a young girl there around 8 or 9. And I said, she was in the hospital gown, and I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm going home today. I'm waiting for my parents. And I said, honey, what year is it? And she said, I think she said 1988 or 1989. And at the time it was 2008 or 9. And I said, no. And I told her the date and the year. And I always create the portal by drawing the Reiki symbol, but that's just me. So I drew my Reiki symbol and spun it to create the light, and she went on through. But even though it had been, almost 2 decades since she had passed, she thought it was still that same very day.
Right.
In her mind, it was that same day. So that always makes me feel a little bit better when I think about these kids, stuck in a closet with some scarecrow man for 150 years.
Right.
But the time does pass.
Yeah, it's different. And I was just so excited that she wasn't hearing them anymore, and that they were. So we're going to do some more work and see. And her brother, who had passed, has been so hugely helpful in this process. And that's another part. Ask your loved ones, ask your guardians, ask your angels to help release these folks.
Yeah, that's why we use the word medium, because we are the link, the medium between this dimension and that dimension. Right. And it takes both on each side to help some of these stuck people.
Right.
And there's lots of, there's lots of reasons that we can get stuck here. We can choose to stay here for a little while, especially if we have someone in our family who's grieving our loss tremendously. It's not that your grief is keeping them stuck here. I think often we can choose to stay here a little bit longer. And I don't mean as an earthbound either. I want to talk about an earthbound and a spirit.
Yes.
In my opinion, in my view, an earthbound is someone who has been presented the light to go on and has refused to move on for whatever reason. Unfinished business, we always hear, or they're waiting on their mom, or they're afraid of any retribution that awaits them on the other side. Several reasons they might choose. I believe that a spirit is someone who has gone through the light and can come back and forth at will. That's something, if I've ever tried to do rescue work, I will always tell the spirits, the souls, if you go through that light, you can come back here anytime you want. But if you don't, you're stuck here. I mean, to me, it's a win-win. But anyway, so spirits are souls that have gone through the light and then they can come back. They get their energy from the light, whereas earthbounds get their energy from us, and that's where it gets tricky. And that's where I tend to differ with a lot of other mediums who will say, oh, well, she's a nice ghost. She's been living in that house for years. She doesn't harm anyone. She might not harm anyone, but her very presence is taking valuable energy. And I think that can be difficult and something that needs to be looked at.
And I have to throw in, as far as being empaths, you can have physical reactions if there's an earthbound spirit that is in your energy field. I mean, it can be sudden mood changes. It could be all of a sudden you're feeling angry or depressed or fearful. And if that isn't your general default position, and out of the blue you just start feeling, that can be a sign. Sudden thoughts alien to your usual way of thinking. If all of a sudden you start thinking doom and gloom, or things that just don't resonate with who you really are, that can be another way. Feeling exhausted. And this is a big one for empaths, but also for anyone who's doing spiritually based work, is I've had to really fine tune that over the last few months of my opening and closing when I'm working with people, even if it's virtual through, on the phone or Zoom or something, because I've noticed too many times that when I finish doing readings, sometimes I'm depleted, and I'm still protecting myself. I'm still doing the work, but there's been such a shift in the energies that there's an intensity that we really need to take care of ourselves energetically with that stuff. You could all of a sudden have almost flu-like symptoms or rashes that come and go, it's just amazing to me, and I say this all the time, that our body is a barometer, but when we're sensing that, or you might feel anxiety, or you might feel nauseous, and just sudden chills and cold, and that goes a lot with someone if you're walking into a house and all of a sudden you feel a cold wind. Can you think of any other physical stuff or that?
Yes. Empathic children will often sense ghosts in their stomach and sometimes in their throat. So a lot of times, if a child is living in a home with an earthbound, they'll have a lot of tummy aches or sore throats, whereas adults tend to sense empathically earthbounds through the head. So they might get headaches or head colds. And earthbounds, if you think about our energy as a drug for them, they can get a quick hit off of anger and fear. It's, I wish we could all see energy the way I believe it really is, the way it emanates around us. But if you can imagine your aura around you, and if you can imagine every time you get angry or stressed out, even for a moment, it's like your aura shoots off these little sparks of energy that they can then imbue and live off of for a couple of days. So often they will misplace your car keys so that for 5 minutes you're running around the house freaking out. You're going to be late for work and the boss is going to yell at you, and they can get a hit off of that. Oftentimes they will cause two people to fight. I have read that ghosts can enter our dreams, and so sometimes they will put thoughts and ideas and suspicions into your mind through the dream state and start to create fights that way. There has been some research done on haunted houses where divorces are much more prominent, as a result. So there can be a lot of needling, niggling, fighting, nitpicking, that type of stuff that builds and builds and builds. And what I find interesting are the earthbounds who are often attracted to haunted houses. And I think those are often empaths who don't know they are empaths. Because if I walk into a house that has an energy in it, I can feel it. I might not always know what I'm feeling unless I sit and really meditate and turn my chakras on, as I say, but I can always feel it. And I think there are so many empaths running around who feel stuff and they don't know what they're feeling or who they're feeling. And because empaths are so kind and compassionate, their first tug is always to help someone. And what better way to help someone than to live in a haunted house and give that earthbound some energy. Right. What I find also interesting, the haunted house in my neighborhood, the people in my neighborhood, we don't move often. It's not like a turnover neighborhood. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And yet this house has had 7 owners in the last 12 years. Yeah. And my daughters and I were just talking, we talk about that house a lot. And we were just going through, and the last 3 owners moved to that house after a serious, significant loss of a family member.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
No. It's almost like because they were in that stage of grief and loss and probably some depression as well, that they were drawn to that. Did they move from other places?
Yes, all over the country.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting too.
I know.
Wow.
And the strange thing is I've been in there and 3 other paranormal teams have been in there. And we can get the energy to dissipate, but we can't get it to cross over. I don't think it's necessarily human.
This is odd, but and what strikes me is these aren't older homes, are they? These are...
No, that house is 19 years old.
Oh, that's a very new house in comparison. This is odd as hell.
The land is old, and the weird thing about the land, I've heard a lot of weird stuff about what went on this land.
Okay.
Like a lot of weird stuff.
What flashed in my head was someone on the construction crew. It was something with someone on the construction crew. And I agree that how land will hold that energy. And a lot of times it may be, and I did a reading several months ago now, and this woman, she was in a rural state, she had horses, and the barn kept popping up and as a place of energy, and it wasn't where the original barn was. And there was something odd about the land it was on, and they'd had trouble. The animals didn't like it there. They were all, and it was a beautiful, beautiful facility. But when they rebuilt the barn on this new spot, the animals didn't like it. And they're always amazing for picking up on spirit. Oh, I want to add that back to my story. When my phone was getting wonky yesterday with the, my alarm going off, and I don't know if I shared that with the people on the story, but my phone just randomly went off before I went and did a reading last night. My dog started barking and growling. And I took them out. I looked out the window. I looked in the driveway. There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing going on in the house or in the yard or in the driveway. And when the phone went off, they both started, and they're easygoing dogs. They're nice dogs. So I just think it's always pay attention to your animals is another thing. If you're in a home and all of a sudden your dog won't go into a room, or your cat like hisses or raises up when a closet door opens, or they're wonderful to help us figure out where things are in the house or on the property.
Well, I want to talk about something that I'm passionate about, that I really believe about Earthbounds. And that is, I think you can call in people like us. I think you can call in paranormal teams. You can call in priests. I think they all help. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I really believe that you don't need anybody to get this energy out of your home. I really believe you just need you and the power of your mind and your belief and the power of your own inner confidence to set your boundaries and tell whatever this is to go.
I agree.
You've got to leave. Don't you think that's important? And if you call in a team to help you cross this thing over, whether it's a human or an entity or just a bad energy of, sometimes I think homes can just collect energy the way homes collect dust and dirt and debris. I think they can just collect a lot of negative energy. I believe that you can get people in there to help you. It's like, have you ever seen that show Hoarders? That is like the most depressing show ever.
No, I've never seen it.
But if you don't watch it. It's so depressing.
Okay, I won't.
It really is. I've seen a couple of episodes. But what they focus on one hoarder, and they bring a team in with a big dumpster, and they clean the house for them. And then they go back in like 6 months or a year, and a lot of the times the house is a hoarding house again.
Right.
And it's because you can't expect someone else to come in and do it for you. It'll clean up the house then, but it's going to reattract the debris. And I think it's the same often with Earthbounds. The famous demonologist from Connecticut, Lorraine and Ed Warren, Lorraine Warren always says, once you clear something from your house, do not talk about it, because talking about it will invite it back in.
Oh.
And so sometimes I wonder if these people call in these teams and they cross this whatever over, they clear out the energy, they put a salt border up, whatever it might be, and then they talk about it, they think about it, they might call that energy back in, which is why I think it's so important to empower the individual with the tools needed to clear this energy.
Right. If you have a child that you're trying to protect, or you have to be passionate about this. You have to really pull. And what I love is we're talking to people who are highly sensitive. That's the people that are listening to this show. You can do this. You definitely can do this. It's sage. It's opening port. I just think that there are so many ways to help do this, and being forceful and saying, no, you're not welcome here anymore. If it's something that feels invasive or dark. But yes, I agree 100% that people need to feel empowered to be able to do this work on their own. And I'm not saying that people who do this and go in and clear houses aren't a valid service. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I think they should work in tandem. They should work, give people the skills so that if you go in and show them how to do this, or if you tell them how to do this and they still need backup, that's fine. But they'll still have the skills to be able to keep their home clear after you're long gone.
Exactly. That's such a good delineation, because one of the paranormal teams that came out to that house in my neighborhood was so nice. One of the members on the team was an electrician, and his job was simply to go around the house and make sure it wasn't just a faulty light bulb causing some of the issues. And so I think paranormal teams do a wonderful service, because they can show you, what is an earthbound and what is just an issue with old plumbing in a house, for example.
Right.
And so I do think that's important. But I remember I went over to a friend's house. Her son had something in his room, and every time he would see or sense this thing in his room, it would trigger an asthma attack.
Ooh.
And it was getting pretty bad. Like a couple of times they had to go to the ER in the middle of the night. So I went over there to help clear it. And, I brought my sage and showed her how to do it and how to, all that stuff. So I'm over there, and I did sense something in his room. But what was interesting, there were 3 other spirits in that house. One was this little old Italian grandmother. And she told me that she's not an earthbound at all. She's just a spirit. And she is connected to her granddaughter who lived next door. And she watches over her because she was married to a very verbally loud man, the granddaughter. And whenever the yelling would get too much, she would come over to my friend's house and just kind of enjoy the peace and quiet. So that was really interesting to me. There was an energy in the playroom of a man who was developmentally delayed, so had the mind of a child. And he didn't really want to move on. He loved this neighborhood, and he loved just going from house to house to house with all the little kids in it and playing with all the toys. And I felt nothing negative about him, just kindness.
But that's a
No,
really,
go
really
ahead.
good point, is you're not going to feel fear from your grandmother being in the house, or from someone who's kind, or from a little kid who loved that house as a child and just comes in to visit or to play with your child that's there now. That's a completely different, as you said, it's spirit versus stock versus earthbound. Okay, I just wanted to.
Right. No, this thing in the little boy's bedroom was more of an entity. And, we're not going into that on this show. We can on another show. But I do believe that there are negative things that aren't necessarily human, and they're just negative.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my friend, I said, I can tell him to leave, but he does not have to respect my wishes. You have to tell him to leave because you're the one who lives here.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, my husband's name is on the deed, the title, the mortgage, whatever it's called, not my name.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was so interesting. And I said, no. They don't, if you tell this thing to leave, he's not going to be like, well, BB&T does not show your name on this piece of paper here. When you get it notarized, I'll leave. I was like, no. It's you standing in your power. It's you saying, no, go
Right.
away. You are not allowed in this home. You're not allowed near my children. And I just thought it was so interesting that her first thought was, I don't own this house. My name isn't on it. It's in my husband's name.
Right.
I mean, it was very, very telling to me. And so once I told her, stage the house, stand in his room, call on your guides, your angels, whatever represents the light and love and protection to you. It's going to be different for everyone. If you are Hindu, you're going to have different protectors than you would if you were Jewish or Muslim or Buddhist or Christian. So you call on your people that represent protection and love and guidance for you, and you ask them to help you. And then you state in no uncertain terms. I think it's so hard for people to do that because these things are invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about anything evil or dark or negative in the world, it always hides in the dark. What's the first thing an abuser will say to his victim? Don't tell anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So just because it's invisible doesn't mean it's not there. I know this woman really well. If any man or woman came up to her son to do him harm, that person would not still be here today. Like, this
Right.
woman is tough and strong in her world. But in this world of invisible weirdness, she was like a fish out of water. And she felt she's a very, very smart woman, a very logical, practical woman. And she felt like an idiot standing in his room saying, you've got to get out. And it was really hard for her to get there. And once she did get there and say that, do you know he has never had another asthma attack?
Yeah, and that's amazing, because that's how it works. That's exactly how it
Yeah.
works. And the invisible part, it goes back to what you said about the energy and the frequency. Like, if we can picture those sparks coming off just because we can't see it with our physical eyes, it's still a frequency that we're tapping into. And that's one of the main things they say, that what you can do to kind of not protect yourself, but to keep things up, is keeping your frequency up. So if you're letting go of negative thoughts, not going, because we align with people who vibrate at the same frequency where we are. And I'm not saying that if you're attracting this in, if that you're a dense person or that you're a negative heavy person, but if you're pretty easygoing, lighthearted, and all of a sudden you find yourself falling into this depression, this anxiety, this fear-based stuff, just be aware that one of the things you can do is really work at releasing that negativity and raising your own vibration, because they're not going to be able to get to you as easily.
And it's hard. It's something I almost call psychological warfare.
Right.
Because if you look at most ghost experiences, what they will do is they will show themselves to one person in the home and purposely not show themselves to anyone else in the home. Why do they do that? It's to create doubt, and it's to divide and conquer.
Right. Times with little kids, it depends on the parents. Are the parents going to believe these kids when they're seeing them? Which I think more and more parents are validating that for their little people and saying, it's okay. Who is this? What do they? They're keeping dialogue open, and it goes back to these little people coming in are not shutting it off, because we're going into a whole new cycle of being on the planet. And part of that are part of it truly, I believe, is being more, it's more about energy and frequency and connection than it's ever been before.
I agree. That's why I think it's so important to keep your house vibrating at a positive energy as much as you yourself have to vibrate at a positive energy. You know, open up the blinds every single day. Have fresh flowers in your home each week. Have live plants or water fountains in your home to keep the energy flowing. Sage it every week. Have crystals in different rooms to keep the energy up. Open up the windows when you can to let the energy out and the sunlight in. Keep it clean, physically clean and clear of clutter.
And if you're not in a place financially that you can, I don't have money for crystals or flowers for this, play music, play uplifting music, dance, shut the news off and watch comedies. I mean, all of the things that are, laugh more, things that are going to raise up your energy. It can be your physical surroundings, which I think are all fantastic. And they are. It's amazing what a bouquet of fresh flowers can do in a home, as far as, because you get all of your senses, or your sight, it just lights you right up. But also just, there are other things you can do that if you're in a situation, or if you're in a home where your partner person or people in your home are negative and they may be drawing that in, you can still raise your own vibration and help counter that.
Right. I mean, haven't you ever, like, you know, I walk around different neighborhoods where I live every day, and you can see the homes that would attract ghosts. You know, there are some beautiful homes around where I live, and the blinds are shut all day long, and that just blows my mind. Like, what do you have against the light? You know, lift up your blinds, open the curtains. There's a beautiful 2-story brick house nearby. It's got gorgeous bone structure, as they say. Whoever lives there, they've never planted a bush. I've never seen a house like this. There's no bushes around the house. It's so odd, and it looks so empty and alone, and the blinds are always shut, and that's like, I don't know. So I think it's important to incorporate the energy of your home into cleaning out this. You know, have nice plants around your front door. Have a nice welcome mat. Learning simple feng shui techniques is a great way to raise the vibration of a home.
Yeah, and because we'll always say they're attracted to our light, and that's why they take our energy. And as empaths, as sensitives, we tend to raise that up and shine a bright light. Kids do that. People who are kind, caretakers, open-hearted people, they have a bright light and a higher frequency, and that can attract some lost souls. But they're more, lost souls may be attracted to you, but you can help them cross over much more easily, because they'll have loved ones in spirit. You can go with the angelic realm. They're just a little confused, and they see your light and they're like, can you please help me? That's very different than haunting kind of stuff that are earthbound.
Well, also, I think it's important, if you are an empath and an intuitive, and people start to find out and they ask you to help them with this, which they will ask you, I think it's important to be responsible for your own energy first and not put yourself in a situation that you're not prepared for. Like, if I'm going through anything stressful in my own life, I will not go help a friend or anyone in town with a ghost situation, because I know my aura isn't strong at that moment. And I think empaths have a really hard time taking that time for themselves to set those boundaries and firm up their aura before they go out into the world and help others.
Right.
To recognize that, you know, if you've got a health crisis on your hands and you're tired all the time, that is not the time to go help anyone, physical or not physical.
Right.
You need to focus on you.
That's a really, really good point, Samantha, because it's a different type of work. It's a different frequency of work. It's a different focus. It's much, much different to do mediumship or intuitive work with happy spirits on the other side who want to say, wasn't the wedding beautiful that you just had? I mean, that's completely different than it takes a different level. You're so spot on with that. It takes a different level of energy to even attempt to do that kind of work. And some people, oh my gosh, they kick ass at working with earthbound spirits. That's
Yeah.
their specialty. And I respect that immensely because that's a different type of, and if you're drawn to that and that's I think it's very important.
I think it's incredibly important work, but you have to know if you're cut out for it or if you're not.
Right.
And I think you have to be honest with yourself. This is just my opinion. People who choose to be earthbound are not the healthiest people.
Mm-hmm.
They're really not. A lot of them are depressive energies or have some type of the cluster beads that Dr. Northrup was talking about on our show last. I've never met an earthbound who's mentally healthy.
And I think the only exceptions would be, as you mentioned, like the little girl who is waiting for the car, or someone who's died so suddenly that they may not realize, or they may be trying to. A lot of times when I'll do readings for folks and someone has passed suddenly, I immediately see them standing outside their bodies watching what's happening and being completely confused because it's so quick.
Have you seen that photo Echo Bodine took? I'll try to find it and post it on our Facebook page. A young man died in a car accident, and someone at the scene, I think one of the police officers, was taking, like photos of the accident, and you can see a large face of the young boy.
Ooh, gives me willies.
It's awful, over the car, and he's like, you can see that he's screaming no. And so I'm glad you made that point, because yes, not all earthbounds are mentally unstable. Some are just in a state of shock or trauma, or are waiting for someone. Some are murder victims and they are waiting for justice.
Right.
And we all have free will. We all have the choice to do that. I just mean the average earthbound that you're going to stumble across if you do this work, if you join a paranormal team, are just odd little people that just don't want to move on. Weird. I mean, really, have you not come across that? It's strange.
It's kind of an odd fascination, but how people who had severe addictions can become earthbound, and they will latch onto someone who's struggling with addiction. And the way that I've read about this and the way that I've understood it is they get kind of a spirit high from that person's energy. So they're still getting their drug of choice. A lot of times folks with addiction issues are very manipulative, controlling. I don't mean this judgmental. It goes with if you choose to see it as a disease or an infliction or a choice. I'm no judge. I'm not going down that road right now. But that becomes the priority in their life, is getting that drug of choice to the exclusion of so many other things. So it can almost make sense why they'd want to stay and still be connected to that.
Now, I want to circle back before we run out of time to what I was saying about how if you are strongly grieving someone, you can keep them with you for a little bit longer. It's not, a healthy thing to stay in grief, but look, sometimes that's life. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it just takes us longer to process a traumatic loss. Right. And I have often found that those souls it's almost like they're given permission to stay here a little bit longer to comfort their loved one who is grieving their loss so much.
Yes.
I was at a funeral last spring. My good friend lost her father, and I don't do this at funerals because it's not a good idea. But I sat there, I'm in my church. I feel very comfortable and at home in this church. And so I opened up my chakras and I just asked to see him. And I saw him sitting in the front pew off to the side, flanked by two huge angels. And I just mentally projected to him, "Are you okay?" And he was saying, "Yes, but I'm going to stay with them." Mm-hmm. And I always, when I do make a connection to someone who's crossed over, I always like to ask them, where are you living now? What's your house look like? How you doing? I always like to see where they are on the other side. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I'll see a lovely home or a beach or something, like a lovely scene. And he showed me a condo. And this man is not a condo type of guy. Mm-hmm. He's very rugged. I would have pictured like a lake house. And I said, a condo. And he said, I'm keeping a foot in both worlds so I can always check on my girls.
Oh.
And he said, when my wife joins me, long time in the future, we'll build our house together then. And I just thought, that is so lovely and sweet. So they sense him around them a lot because he is around them a lot.
Right.
Because he's choosing, he's not stuck, he's not earthbound.
Right.
He's just choosing
to help them grieve.
Yeah.
And
so
heal.
I just wanted to mention that, because if you have lost someone that meant the world to you, and it's been a year, and you're still seeing lights flicker, or you're still smelling their perfume when you walk into your closet or what have you, it doesn't mean they're stuck. It doesn't mean that your grief is keeping them stuck.
Exactly.
It just means that they're going to keep an extra eye on you, as they would, in this, like, let's say, for example, I don't know, like, let's say that your son had to move to California across the country and he was really, really homesick. Wouldn't you fly him home to see you a lot, or wouldn't you fly to California to see him a lot, and just keep that connection really, really strong until he felt comfortable and safe and okay in California?
Right.
So that's how I look at it.
The other, we've talked about keeping your space clear, keeping your frequency up, being assertive, asking for help. We've talked about that. Another really, really important thing, especially as we all become more and more sensitive, is to own your own body and know yourself. Work on staying grounded and connected. And as you become more sensitive, you do become more in tune with yourself, how you react, how you feel things, how you sense things. And I think that's one of the number one things you can do, is any work that brings you closer to your own inner truth and knowing is going to help you deal with interacting with spirits that are either earthbound or not.
I agree. Great advice. I loved to read Echo Bodine's book, Relax, It's Only a Ghost.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to listen to her interviews about ghosts, because she is so scared of ghosts. It just cracks me up, because I'm the same way. That work, I can do it, but it still scares me. And I know they're just people. I know it's not scary, but it does scare me. And if you go on YouTube and listen to some of her podcasts, listen to some of her interviews, she is hilarious talking about how afraid she is of ghosts, and she talks about it really honestly in her book, Relax, It's Only a Ghost. And I recommend people check that out, because it's just a really fun, informative read.
You just made a really good point. Because when, I just want to know if this happened with you as well. When you first started doing a lot of mediumship work, did you have more activity around you when you were trying to sleep?
Yes.
Okay. So
what happened to me, oh, go ahead.
No, go.
I was just going to say, oftentimes the people that I was reading for the next day, their loved ones would come visit me at night and start giving me messages. Yes. And I was like, no, not ready. Or sometimes after a day of readings, I'd come home, and some of them would follow me home to say thank you.
Right. Or show up the next day and say, I forgot to tell you this. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's unsettling because it's tangible. You can feel it, and it's like, I didn't invite this in. Why are they showing up while wake up at 2:00 in the morning? It's like, oh. So just know that that's something that, as you develop your skills and you perfect your connection more, that doesn't happen as much. It happens very, very rarely for me now, and I'm so, so grateful for that.
Me too. Well, you have to learn to set your boundaries. It takes time, but I think we all do learn it. That's why I always recommend people read, because reading all these different mediums and psychics biographies helped me so much. Lisa Williams, in her book, Life Among the Dead, talks about that a lot. I think she has a whole chapter on it. She was doing readings in her home, and she had so much activity. That's why she took at that time in her mind was a really big step to rent an office space. That can be a tricky thing if you are going to do this work out of your home. Of course, I rented an office, and the office was haunted.
Surprise!
Yeah. Sorry. And Deb and I had the paranormal team out, and it was pretty cool, because we actually did get really good validation, and they have it all recorded. Ooh. And we talked her over and did our best. I think we crossed her through. I rented a place above a yoga studio. Mm-hmm. And so it was me and 2 massage therapists and an art therapist, and then the yoga classes downstairs. And everybody told me as soon as I put down my deposit that there was this woman who was haunting the house, who did not like all this metaphysical mumbo jumbo in her home.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of thought, oh, whatever. You get a bunch of yogis and massage therapists and psychics together, someone's going to sense something. But then I kind of started sensing it too. Anyway, that night when we stayed there all night and worked our hardest to cross her over, the head of the paranormal team said, give us a sign if you've heard us and you are going to cross into the light. And he had so much equipment in that home. And he had placed an automatic recorder in every single room of the home. And when he said that, every single recorder in all those rooms turned off at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Okay, and I just want to throw in something about that. There's in my mind, and I don't know enough about this to make an educated discussion or have an educated discussion, there are a lot of apps you can put on your phone. There's a lot of this and that. I think it's a lot of shenanigans with a lot of things that are being marketed to people. I think there are really high-end, true things you can do to detect spirit and voice and energy. I'm not discounting that at all. But just be cautious that if you download something onto your phone, you may not be getting the same thing as someone with this high-end equipment.
Can I tell a really funny story quickly? I know we're out of time.
Yeah, I'd love to. Do you agree with that, though, about the...
I do. I downloaded the Ghost Radar app, and I got some negative, creepy stuff after I did that, and so I quickly deleted it. But the first day I downloaded it, we went to a Sunday dinner at my sister's house, and it was my former husband, Mike, and his brother, Bob, my parents, my sister, her husband, and all our kids. So we're all around her dining room table. We've already eaten dinner. And of course, I got to bring up my mumbo jumbo crap. So I'm like, hey guys, I just downloaded this really crazy cool app called Ghost Radar app, and it's supposed to tell you if you have a ghost in your house. So they're like, all right, we'll turn it on. So we turn it on, and what it does is it scans radio frequencies for words. That's really all it's doing. But my former mother-in-law's name is Maggie, who I loved dearly. So we just turn it on. We're not thinking anything, and all of a sudden it goes, Mike.
Oh.
And then it goes around again. The little app goes around, and then it goes, Bob. So that's the name of Maggie's two sons, right? So my mom picks up the phone, and she goes, Maggie, is that you? It's Carol. Talking into the phone like it's a microphone to heaven. And she goes, is my mother there? Tell her I love her. Maggie. And she sat there waiting for like Maggie to say, hi, Carol. I don't know. We all laughed so hard. But it never said anything else the rest of the day. It was weird.
So maybe there is something to it. The only ones I've experienced.
No. After that, we had negative crap in the house. And it was that, like 2 days later. I deleted the app. I cleared my house. I called in the big guns, which is Archangel Michael for me, and got that crap out of there. And I've never put it on my phone since.
Okay.
I think negative stuff can come through that stuff. I think it can read our minds and know what we want to hear and put it out there so we think it's someone lovely and nice like my Maggie.
Yes, that's an excellent point. That's a really excellent point.
My mom thinking she could talk to heaven through my Ghost Radar app.
That's a story for another day, isn't it? Ways to call heaven.
It really is. Edison had patents on his desk trying to create a phone to heaven before he passed. He really believed that technology would soon be invented that would allow us to connect that way.
Right.
So who knows?
Wow.
Well, we hope we've given you all something to think about and at least some knowledge and information that as an empath, if you do sense spirits, you're not alone, and there are tools, tips, and techniques that you can start to acquire to protect yourself and, if you choose, to help lost or stuck souls. But again, I think it needs to be a calling, kind of, don't you?
I agree, yes.
We wanted to mention before we close out that Denise and I are teaching our first daytime webinar on mediumship and opening up to mediumship. That's starting August 31st. And I'm happy to announce it's already filling up very, very quickly. That's going to be Fridays from 12 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time for 4 Fridays starting August 31st. We're going to be teaching that webinar again at nighttime, Thursday night, starting September 20th from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And all of the information on that is on my website, samanthafay.com. And we hope that you join us on Facebook, Enlightened Empath. If you have a question you want to submit or a story you want to share, you can email us, enlightenedempaths@gmail.com, or you can message us on Facebook. In the meantime, we hope you have a great, wonderful, happy week, free of ghosts and earthbounds. Don't forget to show up, do great work, and share your light. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.